round picks. Made a move with a day left to go as well, which means there's still chance, still opportunity for a secondary move. Tillman fills that empty 15th roster spot that's been sitting there all season. Big fan of this move. I think that he had some optionality at the 5. You can put him down to the 4 a little bit, but mainly we're going to see him at the 5. Very physical presence, gives you some insurance. Got people already in the chat loving it. Please make sure you're in the chat, because that's going to help me just keep flowing and not have to end this after a few minutes. We out here, man. This gives Boston that extra option when you're especially playing back-to-backs, right? Because the way the Celtics have been going at the moment is Porzingis sits on the opening night of a back-to-back. Al Horford sits on the second night of a back-to-back. That means you're moving Luke Cornett up into that starting lineup, and then you start to kind of lose that depth in the back because Neemias will be there. Now, this will affect Neemias, and we'll get to that in a moment for sure. But what happens now is on those back-to-back nights, you can move Tillman into that 3rd position. So is this guy good or what? Can space the floor, can screen, can defend quite well. He's got some good size, physical. He's good. Like, Tillman's been a very consistent piece. He's improved year on year. His numbers are a bit down this year, but that's more because of the situation in Memphis more than it is him as a player. If you look, everyone in Memphis is struggling. Their primary shot creators are all injured. Their pretty much entire stars are injured. That changes role definition. It changes where your shots are going to come from, how your shots are going to come. It's not really the type of situation where you're going to thrive. So if you look at this year's numbers, just do so with an understanding that nobody in Memphis is in a good position right now. Look at his overall career numbers. Remember, this isn't a move where you're picking up a starting big. This is a move where you're picking up somebody to give competition to Luke Cornett. Maybe Tillman plays as the 3rd big on some nights. Maybe Cornett stays where he is and Tillman's just depth insurance. You're not asking for an elite type of production from this guy. You just need him to be consistently good when called upon, right? It's not going to be every game, or I don't imagine it to be every game. I'd like it to be, if that's how it works out. We've got some comments coming up in the chat, so let's jump through these. This is type of name I need the insight only Adam Taylor provides. Casual real talk. Yo, I appreciate you, man. Like, truly appreciate you. At any time anyone says things like this, it makes me not really know how to respond. But no, I'm a big Tillman guy. I'm going to go through his film later today or early tomorrow while everyone's asleep. Just try and get a better handle on what he brings in. Try and speak to some people that cover the Grizzlies, figure out how they're feeling about him. So I'm flattered. I really am. Thank you very much. Do you think that's all they do? Well, see, this is the thing, right? So, Michael, I appreciate you, man. You rock with me a lot. I don't think it's all they do in the sense of there could be another move, maybe, but I think that's why they've done it early, right? Like, you do it early. Now the 15th roster spot's done. The next move, if you make one, somebody has to be going out the other way. So whether that's Lamar Stevens, whether it's Banton, I think Brissett's kind of cemented himself as an energy guy this season. I don't expect him to go anywhere. They've got to make some room for Queta. I don't think so, because then that's 5 bigs. That's 33% of your entire roster makeup is at the 5. I think that Tillman's coming in affects Queta quite heavily, and we can discuss this in a moment. I do want to get to that kind of knock-on effect and the ramification for Neemias, because I think it's quite big. That's going to be one of the bigger impacts of this trade. So just going through, we've got perfect move. Yep, I'm still swerving. Big fan of Swerve Strickland. Not sure if you watch AEW. I think the Celtics make another move. Again, I don't know. I think that, as I said, this move kind of fills an empty roster spot. Whether that changes anything in a moment. Yo, I'm joined by my boy Will. Everybody give it up for the guy that was calling.
Yo, got my guy. Let's go. Let's go.
Baby.
Been calling this since mid-December. Xavier Tillman to the Celtics. Love it. I'm literally catching up on the fly, Adam. I think I've seen 2 second rounders. Is that what went out in the trade?
Yeah. So catch up for a moment. I'm just going to answer a couple more questions. We got Greg coming in as ghost producer. What additional moves can the Celtics still make? Any from the rumor mill? So Chris Dunn's still around. Fanchettio's gone. Drummond is obviously off the board at this point. You don't bring in Tillman to then go after Drummond. That's not going to be what you do. Dunn is an option. I genuinely think that the next move they make, if they make one, will be to shore up a wing position, which is why I don't think Dunn makes sense there. But I honestly, personally, just don't think they make another move. I think there's an optionality there. You can package Banton and, as I said, you can package Stevens and do whatever. But I think this just kind of gives them the depth that they needed.
Mm-hmm. And so it looks like right now, as I'm catching up, it's 2 second-round picks. So this is going to be into the TPE, is what it looks like, right?
Yeah, it looks that way.
This is the Grant Williams TPE. Okay, cool. So I think that makes a lot of sense for this team. And this, just focusing on the Tillman move here just for a second, the biggest reason that I thought this made sense, number one, Memphis, especially, they were, when I kind of first brought it up, this is before Ja Morant came back, and it was like, I don't know, they might be too far out of it. Then their season went to shit with all the other injuries. As we saw, they played with 8 guys that most people haven't never heard of, outside of Luke Kennard and maybe David Roddy. It was a bunch of guys that no one's really ever heard of. And so this just made sense from a logistics standpoint of Memphis getting something, Celtics getting something they need. And he's on an expiring deal, so who knows if this is a long-term move. But Adam, to the point you and I talked about a lot yesterday, I think this is that optionality play, right? With Tillman, I think he's the one thing I feel like the Celtics haven't really had is a small ball 5 this year, right? This is a place where Tillman can kind of be that guy, and I think you can still also potentially at times use him with Porzingis or with Horford because of the way that Porzingis and Horford can space the floor. Tillman can be another big body in that mix as well. So I'm pretty stoked on this move. I think this is a great move from the Celtics this year. I just think there's very little risk to it, and then if between now and the deadline tomorrow, something does pop up with Chris Dunn, you still have that room to do that. Maybe that's, Banton in a second round pick. You don't necessarily need to, but I think you could, have your cake and eat it too, right? If you go get a big man and you can go get some more guard depth, like there's still the chance that Brad can go ahead and make that happen.
Yeah, there's definitely the chance. You still have, again, you have optionality in terms of what you do on the court. You still have optionality in terms of what you do in the trade market. I just want to go back here a moment. Was Tillman's contract the full TPE? No, it wasn't. Tillman's earning 1.9 million this season. So if we just ran that up to 2, you've still got around 4.2 million in that TPE you can play with. Whether or not the Celtics can find somebody that fits into that's a different question. I see a few questions in here. Sorry, Greg, you can go back to using the comments now. I see a few questions in here asking about Lonnie Walker. I like Lonnie Walker. I think that what I said on the last show, which was yesterday, the one thing I'm big on is adding to what you don't have. So Lonnie Walker is this kind of bench scorer that's his specific role. You don't really have that. And for lack of a better term, featured bench scorer. Like Jaylen Brown plays a featured scoring role. You don't really have somebody that can play a similar role off the bench. That's what Lonnie Walker's going to give you. I think that he could be a good option in terms of just scoring. Kind of like a poor man's, like not even a poor man's Jordan Clarkson. They play different styles, but just in terms of the effect that you'd be asking for from Walker, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think with Lonnie Walker, because he's a name that I feel like has just come up in the last day or two, right? Maybe he's been around a few other times, but like last day or two, there's been some serious links to Boston. Lonnie Walker is one of the more talented guys that we've seen linked to Boston, because we've seen him go off. Right, to your point, it's different than how Jordan Clarkson does it, but the guy's a bucket getter, right? He's gonna, when he's in the game, his main role is gonna be to increase your scoring output. And so when we talked about insurance and optionality, I think he falls more into the insurance part of that discussion, where, to your point, Adam, I don't know that he's necessarily, well, this option's not working, let's try this option. Lonnie Walker is more, hey, one of our main guys that is known for getting buckets is not playing tonight or is injured or whatever, and we need more firepower, we need more scoring punch. You're not really going to look to O'Shea Brissett for that. You're not certainly looking to anyone below that. Luke's not that guy. If Sam's hot from 3, he can provide that. Same with Peyton Pritchard. It's kind of hit or miss. So if you just needed some more scoring output because you have one of those main guys, I think we've talked about an episode or 2 ago, where, the starting 5 for the Celtics basically averages around 100 points per game. So if you lose one of those guys, you need to find scoring elsewhere. And while there are options on the Celtics bench, Lonnie Walker is a proven scorer. So I think that's where he would come into play. He would be certainly an insurance factor, where I don't think he necessarily would play night to night, but I think a night, especially as we get towards the end of the regular season, as guys sit out, as they need rest, he's going to be someone that can help you, elevate your scoring output on a night to night basis, and not just be relying on, with Sam, it's going to come down to the 3-point shot to a lesser degree. Sometimes that's the case with Peyton Pritchard. Lonnie Walker is a guy that can get bucket in a more variety of ways than those two.
Yeah, he's pretty much a three-level scorer. Primary scoring comes from above the break, obviously, as a three-point guy. Below average rim finisher, and then an above average or around about average mid-range guy. So you want him playing on those back two levels. You want him in the mid-range and on the three, but you also need him attacking the rim. One, because the Celtics find a lot of success when they attack the rim and force that defense to kind of second guess pushing up too high on the pickup points. And two, because that opens up everywhere else in the floor for him. So I want to go back to, I want to touch on Queta now, because I think this is important, right? This, to me,
real quick though, just shout out to our guy Winfred down here. I just saw that the update about this going into the Justin Jackson TPE instead of the Grant one. And I also saw, just to add on before we move on for a second here, Bobby Marks just tweeted out that this does give the Celtics, so this is just something to think about for the future with this Tillman move, does give the Celtics his bird rights. So we know, we've talked a lot about the Celtics are going to be very limited financially with what they can do.
Now they can
this now allows them that even if they need to go to 5 million, 6 million, like as long as Wick's willing to write that check, like if Tillman works out, this actually could be an extended stay for a role player that, you know, Al Horford's got 10 million next year. We might be looking for a future Al Horford replacement. I don't know if that's Tillman, but I'm just saying, gives you some added flexibility there.
I mean, he definitely gives you a few options in terms of, you know, can shoot the free, can screen real well. You can develop him more as a defender. He's going to be in a system now where a defense is primary. He's going to have good, solid wing defenders around him. It's obviously like he's not coming from a bad defensive team. He had fucking Triple J on his team last year. Do you know what I mean?
Right. Well, this year it's been a mess.
Well, yes. Yeah. But I want to touch on Queta for a moment. I've seen quite a few comments jumping through. How does this affect Neemias? Affects him a lot. I think out of everybody on the entire team, Neemias is the one that gets hurt the most by this move. Like the way I looked at it coming into the trade season was, hey, if you're gonna fill that 15th spot and you don't want to give up any assets, then Neemias is that guy, right? You convert that contract, you keep Neemias. That's not an option anymore. You filled the 15th spot. You've got 4 bigs under contract now. So you've got Horford, Porzingis, Cornet, and Tillman. You don't then go and add Neemias and have 5 bigs that all play pretty much one position. Okay, Allen, KP can probably slide down. Maybe you can slide down Tillman as well. I'd be worried about how he keeps in front of guys at the 4, but you could do that. It just doesn't make sense. And now I don't think we see much of Neemias moving forward unless it's kind of, you know, garbage time, or one of the backup guys, maybe Cornet's out with an injury. It's a back-to-back, so Horford's out. Now we'll inject Neemias into the rotation again because, hey, we've got that optionality on the two-way spot where we can bring him in and use him. Outside of that, I don't expect to see much of Neemias from here till the end of the season. I just don't. And that sucks because he made a big impact this year. He had a lot of fans. But at the same time, that's the cost of when you join a contender as a developmental guy. Winning has to be primary, and Tillman is a really, really solid pickup for this team.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I think for Neemias, unless it's a night where there's multiple guys out, I would say what this almost definitively does is shuts the door on activating Neemias to the active roster.
Yeah,
right.
For this season,
that's what I think we can kind of put to bed. I think you still might see him in the regular season in certain games where maybe now, if they want to rest both Al and KP, especially as
you can do this
deeper into the season. Right now, you have Luke, you have Tillman, and you have Neemias that you can play on a given night. So I think in the regular season, we'll still see a little bit. I don't know how many games left he has available. I think there's only a certain amount that he can play with that two-way contract. What I would be interested, I don't know if you know this, Adam, or maybe this is a question that we have to get through Keith or somebody that maybe knows it a little bit more, is what that does to Neemias' potential in the offseason and going forward. Because I think that's a question that I know I'm not necessarily certain on as we're kind of doing this on the fly here. But just for the regular season, I totally agree. I think this puts to bed the Neemias on the active roster and then therefore being eligible for the playoff roster. Seems like Tillman's the way to go. And now I just really like the depth that you have when you have Horford, Porzingis, you got Tillman, and you got Luke. That's deep and that's versatile with 4 guys that I think can all contribute in different ways and in different scenarios. So I think that's massive within itself. And while I really like what Neemias brings to the table, I think we'll get a little taste of it here in the regular season. That's going to be a question for the offseason and for next year as to what and if there is a role for him with this team. But I think for this year, that does kind of put an end to it, at least looking ahead to the playoffs.
I think it also goes down to what decision do you make with Tillman in the offseason. Like, if you're going to keep Tillman, if you're going to make a move, you've got his bird rights, as we just spoke about. You've got some options ahead of you now for your big man spots. If you're going to keep Tillman long term, you don't keep Neemias, because I think everybody's quite happy with where Luke is at this point. I think that he's got quite a few fans in the franchise. So I don't expect to see much change unless Horford turns around and says, like, you know, you win a championship this year for argument's sake, and Horford's kind of like, yo, I'm done, or this season's my last season. Maybe then you do find a way to keep Neemias just so you've got that fallback option after that. Because obviously winning a championship probably changes where Horford's at, and that's a conversation for the offseason once we know where everything lands. But for now, yeah, I think Neemias, for me, we don't see him much. There'll be a conversation in the offseason whether they keep him or not. I'm not sure about whether he's eligible for another two-way, because he's been on a few two-ways with a few teams.
With the Kings before, and
I'm
not
eligibility
sure where that lies.
He might be done, but I'd need to confirm.
Quick update here, Adam, which is one of the funnest parts about this, is doing this on the fly as more and more reports come in. So it looks like now, this is coming from Keith Smith, is that it looks like they do have to actually use the Grant Williams TPE instead of the Justin Jackson TPE. Looks like there's about a $250K slight difference in what was available with the Jackson TPE. So I think it actually is going to be like a fourth or a third, I guess, maybe, of roughly of what that Grant Williams TPE is. That's what it's looking like. I don't know. It looks like this is still kind of fluid and changing, but that's the latest I just saw from Keith just 2 minutes ago. He tweeted that.
I'll tell you what, it's one thing that's a kicker there is when you use a TPE, you get Justin, I want to respond to this personally in a moment. Thank you very much. The one thing when you use a TPE is you get a kicker on top. So I think it's like 20K or 200K. I'd have to remind myself.
I think that's that 250 that Keith is referencing.
Yeah, so that 250, they've just fallen outside of that kicker, because you usually get like a grace amount on top. Just to, you know, if it's like, if you've got a 1.8 million contract coming in, but you've got a 1.75 million TPE, that grace amount allows you to just absorb it. Obviously, this has just came in over. You've still got, so you shaved a little bit off of that Grant TPE. You've got a bit of a return. Feel a bit better about losing Grant. I just want to go back to Justin here real quick. Justin, man, I appreciate you. I think the Celtics media landscape is ridiculously talented, man. So whenever I see anyone shout me out like that, I just want to take a moment and say thank you. Yeah, so moving on, I do think that I feel a bit better about Grant moving as well now, because Tillman's just, it gives you everything Grant could do, but in my opinion, probably a little bit better. You just don't have the positional versatility defensively than what you would with Grant. But everything else, I think Tillman's a better screener. He's probably a better three-point shooter, or at least on par. Grant was a three-point.
I got to look it up. I think this year Tillman's actually been shooting the ball pretty well. He's been in and out with a few injuries, so you know it's
and like I said this before you jumped on. One thing that I want to kind of stress to everybody is when you're looking at any member of the Grizzlies that's healthy this year and their numbers are down, you need to factor in the shot creators are injured. Their role definition is different. The way the offense is running is different. The way the defense is able to load up on guys is different, because you don't have the spacing, you don't have the star talent, the gravity is not there. So there's a lot there that can affect how a player's numbers look, because it's just a situation their role wasn't designed for, or their skill set isn't ready for. So I do think that anyone that's looking at anyone's numbers that gets traded from Memphis, don't really put too much stock into it unless their name's John Conchar, because we all know where John Conchar is. I was so against that.
Yeah, I mean, his three-point shooting is definitely nothing to write home about. So I don't think that's going to be Xavier Tillman's calling card here. I know, I think Greg put this in the chat here. Like, what is Xavier Tillman's X factor?
I saw somebody respond.
Yeah, X factor skill, and you know, it's honestly, I think it's his versatility. Like, I think it's the ability for him to be that small ball five and to play the power forward. I think that's where it's going to come from. I just saw someone else also tweet out, you know, like he gets a lot of steals for a guy at his position as well, right? So I think when you add him as a defensive-minded player that you're adding to this team that's just really solid. And someone else put here, I can't see where it was, that he doesn't really have the ego, and he's been used to playing kind of that. And this was part of my appeal for Xavier Tillman, is he's coming from an area where, I mean, if you look at his career for the Grizzlies, Played 59 games as a rookie, started 12 of them. Next year, 53 games, started 2 of them. The next year, 61 games, started 29 of them. This year, played 34, started 13. And to me, that's the versatile role guy that can change different, his approach game to game. And that's kind of the mentality he's coming here with. And that's what he's going to be for this team. He may get a few spot starts. He may be a guy playing 15 minutes a game. He's going to be playing the 4 in some lineups. He's going to be playing the small ball 5 in other lineups. So the fact that he's used to this already in his NBA career, this is a pretty easy plug and play. Now, of course, you have to, put it all on court and see what it all looks like. But from the theory of where he fits with this team and how you slot him into rotations in certain matchups, I think that's going to be a seamless transition mindset wise for him, because he's already been doing it throughout his career at Memphis.
And Memphis have been a winning team apart from this season. They've been incrementally improving every year, as you kind of alluded to there. You've got talent that's in Memphis at star level, so he's going to come in, he's going to slot in. The ego thing's going to be big, because I feel like some nights he could play decent sized minutes, and then other nights he might not play at all. So not having that ego, having that team first mentality, to me is going to be a core part. Bring some toughness. I know that was a big thing. That toughness was one of the main reasons I was drawn to Drummond as a trade option, was just because you need somebody that can come in and just set those hard screens, bruise guys up, kind of give you that counter punch when somebody comes in and tries to punch you in the mouth, like Miami, like Orlando. I've pretty much, like I said at the start, I need to go and watch more Tillman film now, because one, I want to be aware of what type of player they're getting. 2, I want to be able to see what situations, what schemes he might slide into where he makes sense, especially in terms of set plays and stuff.
And he's a thick guy, right? You talked about him screening, and you talked about some toughness. He's 6'8", 245 is what I'm looking at here. And, he kind of plays with that. He's a lot more. He's not going to play above the basket, right? But he is kind of that more ground bound, get physical guy from what I've seen. And I'm with you. I need to watch more tape. But he does seem like he will bring an element of toughness, different than Andre Drummond style. But he will be able to bring that to this team.
So this is a good one. Brian Robb just tweeted, the Celtics don't need to. They have an open roster spot. Wouldn't surprise him if the Celtics sent out a player as part of the deal. That would then leave the Grant Williams TPE intact.
Right.
You know what I mean? It gives you, again, we keep coming back to this word optionality, but it gives you optionality tomorrow, basically, when there's more low-hanging fruit. I do think that maybe we see a little trade there as well. I still kind of really like the idea of Chris Dunn. Just for the defensive side.
The more Chris Dunn is lingering around and you see it in different rumors, I feel like that's the name. And I think Greg called this out as well too. That's the budget Alex Caruso move, right? That's the budget-based Caruso move.
While we've got quite a few people in the chat, I am just going to give myself a little bit of self-promo. It got rebranded today because I had to move platforms. There was a whole thing. But if you want to read up on why Chris Dunn would work for this team, check out the Celtics Chronicle over on Substack. Just type in Celtics Chronicle. Make sure you subscribe. It's free. I'll have some thoughts on Tillman there tomorrow as well, along with some longer thoughts, again, probably over on Celtics blog. Celtics Chronicle on Substack. Show me some love. Okay, moving back onto this. So we've hit how it affects Neemi. We've hit how Tillman slots into this team. We've kind of accepted that maybe the 3-point shot is more rumor than substance. Do you know what I mean? Personally, I think maybe with the extra space and it comes around, I think he could be a handoff guy. I think being a handoff guy is actually a skill. I know a lot of people are like, well, you just hand the ball off and it's done. But, it's where you position the handoffs. It's where you position your body. There's timing and everything that goes into it. So we've hit on Tillman. We've hit on Queta. We've hit on Lonnie and Chris Dunn. We've accepted that Drummond is now off the table because you brought in that 4th big. Where do we want to go from here?
I mean, honestly, I think we've already started. It's just what's next, or is there a next? I think.
I meant in terms of the show, right now.
No, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. As for the Celtics, I think in terms of the conversation and in terms is there? I don't know if it would be Saddiq Bey, but I think that becomes the next question. And this is still as we're kind of filtering in, and we appreciate everybody in the chat that's filling us in as we're discussing it live, as you're letting us know, is it a TPE? Is it not a TPE? Could it be a player? All of those are very helpful, because those are going to be the factors in whether or not there is that one more move for Stevens to make. And, just throwing names around. Like we saw Simone Fontecchio from Utah. He's already off the table, right? That was a name that was rumored. So that leaves guys like Chris Dunn, Sadiq Bey. I like that name. I don't think that's going to be a possibility. I think there's going to be probably more teams going for him than really the Celtics are going to be willing. The Celtics, that you mentioned, Adam, I think at this point, once you figure out if this is a TPE with Tillman or if you're going to send out, Banton or Svi or whichever one of those, 4 players at the end of the bench that will match that salary. Once they figure that out, I think from there, it's kind of going to allow the Celtics to sit back and say, all right, here's the chips that we have to play with. What happens when the Bulls finally make a move and make a trade with the Nets? Or what happens when Dallas finally makes a move? And what's the low-hanging fruit, like you said, that remains that Brad can just go, oh, you need a facilitator? Cool. Here's I got a TPE. I got a second round pick. Let me get Chris Dunn in this trade. I think that's what we're probably gonna be waiting around for. I love this as a first step. I love this as I was not expecting, this is a little bit, I'll say it's a little bit bigger of a move than I expected, even though I've been saying that I feel like this made a lot of sense for almost 2 months now. I still thought that this was probably not going to happen just based on what we were hearing. But then again, you never know.
See, I like this one. Tillman 100% can play in the playoffs. Queta,
yes, that's big.
Chance.
That's one, and that's one of the reasons for me that I always thought this move made sense. Is that now with Luke and Tillman, once you get beyond Porzingis and Horford, because they're going to play the majority of the playoff minutes, right?
Yeah, of course.
But once you get beyond them, because they're going to play regardless of the matchup, now you can go matchup based. Series to series. Is it Tillman? Is it a Luke series? And you usually are going to have the first 3 games to kind of play around if you're not sure, and then eventually that's going to reveal itself to you within the series.
I wanted to go back a minute to what you was talking about in terms of being a facilitator as well.
Quick.
Lamar Stevens is being sent to Memphis. That means, is this confirmed?
Per Jake Fisher, it looks like is what he just said. So
okay, so Fisher knows this
pour
stuff.
Pour one out for the Lamar Stevens era in Boston.
We hardly got to know you, bro. We hardly got to know you.
Just for the record, Stevens Island, Greg and Adams, Brissett Island, Will Weir taking the dub.
I was very low on Brissett coming into the season. Do you know? But I stand by it though, man. I stand by it. He's earned his spot with effort and hustle, not with finishing. And my biggest issue was the dude can't score.
Oh no, I get it. I'm just saying that was one of the debates that we had at the beginning of the preseason. So yeah, I'm just giving myself a little bit.
Pat yourself on the back if you haven't seen. I gave you a shout out.
This is all about me taking a pat in the back here. Tillman,
have you seen that? I gave you a shout out on Twitter. Literally,
I did. I appreciate you, man.
Yeah, that's because you deserve the love, bro, man.
Thank you, man. I do my research. I try to find it in the weeds here. It's not always in the notes section.
Himmel's back. I'm just checking. Someone's just put Adam just tweeted. I was like, I haven't tweeted, so it must be the better Adam. Wait there. According to the league source, the Celtics are likely to send a bench player back to the Grizzlies in the Tillman deal in order to keep an empty roster spot. That means we're not done, baby. That means Chris Dunn's still coming. Sorry to do the hand clap.
That to me makes it more likely now that it's not just
we're looking like Drake after yesterday. Oh. Dude, I logged into my Twitter account must have been about 4 a.m. You know, when you just randomly wake up at our age and you're like, I need to piss. Mm-hmm. So check my Twitter when I've got back into bed, and I was like, I wish I never looked, man. Because it was just, I was like, why do I need this?
Yeah.
So that made falling back to sleep difficult. I ended up waking up at
sometimes you're just better off not checking that phone. That's
dude. But it's so close to trade season. You're like, man, I need to check. I need to see.
Dude, I check it every time I'm away from my phone for a few minutes. I'm like, all right, let me just see, just to get. And this was one of the rare cases you texted me, and I you were like, I'm going live for the trade. I was like, wait, what trade? I missed it in that Will
was not going to be here. Everybody, yeah. The situation changed Will's plans completely.
Exactly.
Not done. It's a party in Beantown. Okay, so we'll end like this. I want to list out. It's assuming the Celtics do send out somebody and they keep an open roster spot, and assuming they are going to make another trade. This open roster spot could be for the buyout market. We can't just assume that there's going to be a trade, but let's just play along, right? Assuming they trade someone, assuming there's an open roster spot, assuming they make another trade. Who's your number one guy to pick up?
Right now, it's Chris Dunn. I think Chris Dunn just makes the most sense to complete this roster. I would say between Chris Dunn and Lonnie Walker, those are the two guys I'm looking at. I think Lonnie Walker is just really talented, and so I think if you can add him for cheap or into the TPE, then I think that just is another guy that we've seen in random. Was it last postseason or 2 postseasons ago where Lonnie Walker had a moment, right, where he went off in the fourth quarter? I think it was for the Lakers last year.
Last year in the Lakers,
I think it was last year. He had like a 20-point fourth quarter where he went off and won a game. Like, if you can stash a guy like that on your bench just for a second round pick, like, that's a pretty damn good move, right? So
Yeah.
I think him and Chris Dunn are at the top of my remaining wish list for, what may happen today and tomorrow. How about you?
Yeah, Chris Dunn's number one for me. Like, I like the defensive side of things. I like the switchability. I like the fact that he's a bit more of a playmaker than what Pritchard is. As I said yesterday, I don't expect his 3-point shooting to be sustainable if he kind of slides into Boston's 3-point heavy system. Maybe you see that 41% slide down closer to like 36, 37. I do like Lonnie Walker, though. The only difference is I think Lonnie can be exploited a little bit more defensively. So you'd see him less in the postseason, where I feel like Don could hold his own defensively. And because of his
but the one thing you'd have to remember with Lonnie Walker, right, is that he's going to be likely out there with 4 other really good defenders. Right.
Yeah, this
so
is
that makes
true.
him less of a liability.
Give the new viewer, sorry. I was just reading producer notes. We were reading producer notes. So to go for a recap real quick, Tillman's joined the Celtics. We don't know if somebody's going back in the opposite direction yet. There's been reports from Jake Fisher that maybe it's Lamar Stevens. Some second-round picks are heading over to Memphis. If the Celtics don't send a player out, then it's going to go take a chunk off that Grant Williams TPE. Around about, I do have the salary here, 1.9 million will come off that 6.2 million TPE. If they do send a player out, they're going to keep an open roster spot. If they don't send a player out, they're going to lose an open roster spot. Tillman coming in basically ends Neemias' opportunities of consistent minutes within that starting rotation. Tillman also provides physicality, provides some scoring. If the Celtics do trade a player, they're probably going to make another trade in the next day or so, or they're going to be active in the buyout market. If they don't, then they won't.
So a couple other updates just to add to that here, Adam. So Woj just came out with what picks it's going to be for the Celtics. So it's a 2027 second via Atlanta, and then a 2030 second round via Dallas. That's going to go to the Grizzlies. So I think that's regardless of whether it's TPE or if Lamar Stevens is going to be attached to that, TBD. Do not know on that front quite yet. And then I believe I saw someone else say this still leaves the Celtics with 8 second-round picks. So you think back to draft day, right? And what did Brad Stevens do? Lord of the second-round picks, guy who hates first-round picks with a passion, loaded up on him. And so this is where you see it bear fruit, right? Now that you make this move to get another rotation piece. And that's the part that's so crazy is I think Tillman is a legit rotation piece. Like, I think he's going to actually play most nights. You're going to see either him or Luke, or him and Luke in some capacity, just about every single night here throughout the end of the regular season. And, there's still 8 more second round picks and a few TPEs to play with. So Brad's making magic on the margins right now.
I'm loving it. I think for now we can end it here. I think that we've kind of hit on absolutely everything. Obviously, we don't know how this trade's going to shake out completely, but I think if we wait here, we could be waiting here for 2-3 hours.
Yeah.
And we're going to be wasting everybody's time.
And I'm sure we'll circle. I'm sure tomorrow we'll be back out here at some point. We'll be back tomorrow. So just make sure, as usual, you guys are following us across all the socials. Make sure you're following us on YouTube. Make sure you're subscribed so that when we go live like this, you're getting the update that we're in here. So make sure that you guys are following us. And like I said, tomorrow
on the Discord, make sure you're on the Discord.
Hit us up
make sure you're on Celtics, the Celtics Chronicle over on Substack. If you want early access to interviews and to episodes, we've got the membership options available at $5. Appreciate everyone that tuned in, man. This was great to do a live show where there was so many people just in the chat and just really fucking with us, man. So I appreciate that a bunch. And we'll be back tomorrow, hopefully, to another big time audience. Until then, Will, my guy, thank you for dropping what you were doing and jumping on with me. I was floundering. I appreciate you.
I know how tough it can be. So I was like, I got to find a way to get in there. So glad I could, man. And just for you guys hanging around, let's give you a little bit of our guy Greg's band down here in Austin, Texas. This is Black Sheep Optimist. We'll be back tomorrow. Go Celtics. Celtics Hawks tonight. Greg and I will be here with the post-game show. Come check it out.
I'll have 10 takeaways in the morning over on Celtics blog.
Let's
Peace.
go.
Every time I get this high, I lose my mind. It don't take much no more until I hit the floor. Every time I get this high, it's you I find. It don't take much no more until I'm at your door.
You cut me to my core, baby. What can I say? You got me on the floor, you know I came to play. I know I shouldn't, but you seem to take my pain away.